Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here to share with you some tools that I've been working on designing and developing, not only for people with dementia, but people with cognitive impairment and also in the healthy aging sphere. And so when I was doing a postdoc here in the mechanical and industrial engineering department, we worked on tools that we developed for people with dementia and also on designing and developing tools for individuals with cognitive impairment. And currently I am running my own company called BrainShape, and it's in that sort of domain that I'm focusing on the healthy aging population and tools that we can use to help keep people engaged for as long as possible. So just a little bit of an introduction. So we can think of sort of this aging sphere as having these three very distinct separate categories. So we have healthy aging, which is the process of developing and maintaining the functional abilities that maintain and enable well-being. Mild cognitive impairment, a completely separate and distinct phase, is the stage between normal age-related cognitive decline and more serious declines that are associated with dementia. So for example, this is when we see deficits in memory that are beyond what we see in normal aging. And then we have the dementia category. So this is a progressive neurodegenerative brain disorder. And dementia is an umbrella term that encompasses a whole bunch of different types of mental decline. Most predominantly, it's a memory deficit. And these cognitive declines are severe enough to greatly impact someone's ability to perform activities of daily living. And so these are these three distinct categories, non-overlapping, of aging that I'm going to be focusing on today, and speaking specifically to the different types of tools that we can design and develop and conceive of that can target and address the specific requirements of these distinct groups of individuals. So when we think of staying engaged, there's sort of a general understanding of what that means. So in all cases, staying engaged means that you're interacting with your surrounding environment, you're being mentally challenged, whatever the sphere of your mental challenge capacity is. You're staying physically active, again, within your domains of what physical activity can mean for you, and staying socially engaged as well. But the difference between sort of what staying engaged looks like will appear different whether you're falling into the healthy aging category, mild cognitive impairment, or dementia. But in all cases, the fundamental components of what being engaged means stays consistent. It's just the manifestation of what that looks like will be different for these different groups of individuals. So today I'm going to be talking about engagement tools that I've worked on designing and developing and researching for individuals with dementia and cognitive impairment. So those two populations was work that I did as a postdoctoral research fellow here at the University of Toronto. And then I'm going to be talking about, at the end, the healthy aging group of individuals and the company that I founded, brainshape.ca, and how we can think about staying engaged in that healthy domain. So first, I'm going to talk about dementia, and I'll be talking about a tool that we designed and developed with a company called Ambient Activity Technologies. The tool we developed is called Abby, and there's a picture of it there on the left, but I will go into more detail about it in a little bit. But it's a wall-mounted interactive tool that was designed specifically for people with mid to late stage dementia that are living in long-term care homes. So they're living in locked units in long-term care homes. So there's severe impairments, memory declines, etc. The next group that I'll talk about is the tools that we developed for individuals with cognitive impairment. So whether they're living at home or in retirement homes or in long-term care. We designed a suite of tools called the Centivizer. So these are smart technological solutions that enable seniors with cognitive impairments to stay engaged for as long as possible and stay connected with the outside world. And lastly, I'll talk about the healthy aging group through the company that I co-founded, brainshape.ca. And this is a platform that I designed specifically with the 60 plus age group in mind, about staying physically engaged, mentally engaged, and socially engaged, and what that looks like for people, and how to really encourage and inspire people to stay engaged in meaningful ways in their lives. So we'll start with the tools that we developed for dementia specifically. So this is that Abby tool that I mentioned. So this is for individuals with mid to late stage dementia, as I mentioned. So when we think about dementia, it's very important to clarify it is not a part of normal aging. It's a neurodegenerative brain disorder that comes with it a whole suite of cognitive impairments. Most predominantly, it's memory loss, difficulties with thinking and problem solving, challenges with communication. And these cognitive declines are severe enough to impact an individual's ability to perform activities of daily living. The images there didn't look like that on my computer, but here we are. It's just a image of a section of the brain across the different phases, so from healthy aging to severe dementia. And it was just to illustrate that as you progress through dementia, your brain's actually shrinking and deteriorating, and it's because of that loss in brain mass that we see these cognitive impairments. So when we think about what goes when someone has dementia and progresses through dementia, there's a whole long list of abilities that decline. We see reductions in memory, poor insight, difficulties with planning, challenges processing information, the ability to reason or learn new ideas is compromised. We see challenges in language, disorientation to space and time, intolerance to stress, and lower control mechanisms. And so there's this whole long list of abilities that decline as someone progresses through dementia. But it's really important when we were thinking about designing tools for this specific group of people to not just focus on what's compromised. Because when we think about dementia, there's also a lot of abilities that remain intact that I don't think a lot of people focus on when they're designing for this group of people. So there's still a capacity to enjoy, there's still an ability to learn. It's just not in the traditional sense when we conceptualize learning. It's not, I give you information and you repeat it back to me. It's more working on this sort of automatic procedural memory part of the brain. And so we wanted to think about designing a technology that really leveraged these abilities that remain functional as someone progresses through dementia. So when we think about what stays, we know that people with dementia have emotion. They feel joy, they feel sadness, they feel anger, they feel content and happiness. We have people have motor control in most cases, reinforcement or implicit learning. So that's that automatic reflex learning that I was talking about. People want to seek reward and enjoyment, and also a lot of the learned skills that people have retained and had their entire lives, those remain intact for well into the progression of dementia. So for example, if someone was a piano player throughout their entire adult life and now have mid to late stage dementia, they might not be able to explicitly recall that they know how to play piano, but oftentimes if you see that person at a piano, they will be able to play it because the mechanisms that are involved in playing the piano are so reflexive and automatic that they don't require the sort of higher level cognitive processing. And another example is reading. Reading is one of the first things that we learn to do when we're little children, and often we retain that ability well into the progression of dementia. And oftentimes it's just a matter of having the font size large enough so that someone with dementia can actually read the font, but the capacity to read still remains intact. So this capacity and desire to explore and to feel joy. And also the enjoyment of favorite music. And so this is something that was really important to us when we designed these tools for people with dementia. When we listen to music, it utilizes so many different parts of our brain. There's the emotion centers, the part of our brain that's processing the beat, the movement part of our brain when we're moving our bodies to something that we enjoy. And so because it uses so many different brain regions, our knowledge for our favorite music, again, stays intact for quite substantially into the progression of dementia. And also when we were designing, we wanted to think about the use of something called Montessori Principles. So we wanted to create something that really utilized the sense of play and sensory motor activities. So there are some fundamental Montessori principles that we wanted to leverage when we were designing for this population, including the promotion of self-confidence and independence. So we wanted to create something that people could use on their own. They didn't have to be directed on how to use it by a staff member in the long-term care home or their family member. And I really had to focus on a person's functional capacity and what their interests and hobbies were. So thinking about what sort of gave that person meaning in their life and bringing that to the tool so that they could engage with this meaningful content, using hands-on activities and repetition, and also sequencing activities from simple to more complex. And you always want to start with the most simple form of a task so that you really increase the likelihood that someone will succeed. And by creating these opportunities to succeed in performing a task, you create feelings of confidence and joy for individuals. And that was really important to us. So we wanted to solve a problem that's faced in the dementia care community using these Montessori principles, and also really importantly, focusing on the abilities that remain intact. So the main problem that we wanted to focus on designing for dementia was the problem of responsive behaviors. So responsive behaviors are quite prevalent in individuals with dementia that are living in long-term care homes. They include behaviors such as agitation and aggression, so screaming, yelling, crying, increases in anxiety, pacing, wandering, repetitive questioning. And almost half of the residents that live in long-term care exhibit some form of responsive behaviors. And the need to attend to these behaviors from the perspective of the long-term care home and the staff is immediate. Because if someone is screaming or throwing something, you have to address that. You can't say, oh, I'm busy right now, I'll get to that in a minute. So it really sort of takes a lot of time, and it's really resource consuming for the staff. And as you can imagine, it's very stressful and disruptive. If someone is in a space and they're clearly distressed and feeling anxious and crying or yelling, that creates a negative environment for everyone that's in that space, other residents, other family members, and the staff as well. And so this was a really important part of our focus when we were designing for dementia. And oftentimes responsive behaviors are managed in long-term care homes through the use of antipsychotic medications. So more than 40% of individuals with dementia living in long-term care are taking antipsychotic meds. So for one, it's extremely expensive for the federal government, costing over $38 million per year. But more importantly than that, there's some very severe adverse health side effects to the use of antipsychotic meds for the individuals taking them. We see increased risk of falls, increased risk of stroke, and there's even an increased risk of death associated with the use of antipsychotic meds. And because of all of this, there was this really big push in Canada to reduce the use of inappropriately prescribed antipsychotic medications. And Canada nationwide has been quite successful in the reduction in the use of antipsychotic meds in the long-term care homes. And one of the main reasons for me to think about reducing the use of these antipsychotic meds is because you're not really addressing the underlying root cause of the responsive behavior. If someone is agitated or crying or angry, and you give them an antipsychotic med, they might stop screaming because now essentially they're just sitting, not doing very much at all. But you're not getting at the underlying reason of why they were so distressed to begin with. Were they feeling lonely? Were they missing their family? Did they just want to sit with someone and have a chat over a tea? Is the space perhaps too noisy and they're maybe more of an introvert, so they needed some quiet time? And so it's really important to think about what are the underlying causes of that distress. So what we wanted to do was create a technological solution to help manage responsive behaviors specifically in long-term care homes for people with dementia, so mid to late stage dementia. And we wanted to create something that was ambient, so it was placed on the wall in the hallway of long-term care, so it was available for easy access at any time. It's meant to augment existing programming, so it wasn't meant to replace any of the recreational programming that currently happened in long-term care homes. It's just meant to provide anytime access to meaningful activities for residents. And so what you have here is this sort of looks like an old-timey radio, so we wanted to create something that was really familiar, visually familiar for individuals. You can pet the cat, and then a cat video would play. Turning the wheel, you would elicit, the machine would actually know the resident that was standing in front of it, and it would present personalized content for that person. So you turn the wheel and you would see family photos of your own family. And so people with mid to late stage dementia might not be able to explicitly recall the name of an individual, but they are familiar with that person, they know that they love that person, and they're happy to see that person on the screen. You turn the radio knob and it would play your favorite music. Turn the TV knob and it would play your favorite television shows and your favorite movies. And so it was really important for us to have something that could not just present content in general to keep people engaged, but content that was meaningful and personalized to them. So part of my work that I did as a postdoc at U of T was to evaluate the impact of this tool on residents and staff and family members. So we had several key research questions that we wanted to ask. So one was whether the use of ABBY impacted responsive behaviors in residents. We wanted to look at the impact of ABBY on cognitive and emotional status, and also to look at the impact of this technology on staff and family members. So for example, in terms of satisfaction. So we collected data from residents, staff, and families, and we collected a whole list of different outcomes in each of those participant groups. So in residents, we looked at agitation, aggression, level of depression, ability to perform activities of daily living, quality of life, cognitive status, use of antipsychotic meds. We tried to use pedometers to assess how much people were moving around, but that didn't really work out so well. And also in these machines, we had, with the consent of the long-term care homes, video camera that would record residents when they interacted with ABBY. And so we wanted to capture the emotional response of the residents while they were interacting with the technology. That data is still currently being analyzed, and so I don't have that to report to you today, but it is still forthcoming. In staff, we looked at strain and burnout approaches to care, as well as workplace satisfaction. And for families, we wanted to look at the impact of ABBY on their satisfaction while they're visiting their loved ones. So this is the design of the project. So it was a pre-test, post-test design. And essentially, we collected baseline data of the metrics that I mentioned on the slide just prior. So we wanted to look at how people were performing without any intervention. And then we installed the ABBY unit on the wall. And waited a whole month so that the residents and families and staff could all get used to using ABBY and interacting with it. And then we collected 3 rounds of post-test data to look at how much these outcomes changed as a result of using the ABBY technology. We also had one group that did not have personalized content, so the content that those residents saw when they interacted with ABBY was just generic and not personalized to them. So we collected data from 6 long-term care homes in total, 3 in the GTA and 3 in North Simcoe County. And one of the homes in the GTA was our control group. So in terms of the participant demographic, so this is the data that I'm going to be presenting today is just on the 5 long-term care homes that had the personalized content. So those residents saw their own family photos, heard their favorite songs, etc. So we had 27 residents participate in the research. The average age was around 82 years old, mostly female. We had 58 staff members, mostly female again, predominantly full-time. And then also we collected data from 18 family members and visitors, 10 sons or daughters, 5 brothers or sisters, 2 husbands or wives, and 1 friend. So if we look at the data, I'll just click over to the next slide because it highlights where those significant differences are. We see that after using Abby, we saw a significant reduction in agitation. We saw lower paranoia and delusions in residents, reductions in activity disturbances, and lower prevalence of aggressiveness, and also reductions in anxieties and phobias. And importantly, we also saw this significant improvement in quality of life. So the red is highlighting the significant differences. The blue items are those that are sort of trending significant, so they didn't quite reach significance, but they're sort of trending in the right direction. And then the black items, there's no change at all. And for the staff data, we just looked at the pre-test baseline as compared to the first round of post-test data. So this is just 1 month after usage. And this is the only significant difference we saw, which is highlighted in red, is a significant reduction in a burnout outcome called emotional exhaustion. And anecdotally, for the family members, they noted that using Abby during their visits really enhanced their overall experience and heightened the quality of the interactions that they were having with their loved one. Because Abby, when it showed images of, flowers or dogs and puppies, it really sort of gave them a cue to be able to interact and converse with their loved one in a meaningful way. So just to summarize the findings from the Abby research, after 3 months of using Abby, we saw a significant reduction in agitated behaviors for residents with dementia living in long-term care, reductions in physically non-aggressive agitated behaviors, so lower exit seeking, reductions in pacing, lower verbally non-aggressive behaviors, so those are things like repetitive sentences or repeated questions, and lower verbal aggression such as screaming. We saw reductions in paranoid and delusional ideation, lower activity disturbances, reductions in aggressiveness, and reductions in anxieties and phobias, as well as improvements in quality of life. For staff, after 1 month of using Abby, we saw reductions in workplace burnout, so specifically the emotional exhaustion outcome, and family visitor satisfaction was reported following Abby usage. So next I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about the Centivizer. So this was a technology that we developed specifically for people with cognitive impairment. This is an image of our team, which has changed sort of in terms of who's on the team. And the Centivizer is the technology in the center there. But it has sort of changed forms along the way. We worked on this project for over 3 years, and it's continuously sort of iterating in its design. But I just wanted to point out the screen has something called a serious game on it. So it's a game that allows us to assess cognitive performance. And in this serious game, the task is to hit the moles that are not wearing hats. So as quickly as possible, you tap on the mole. And in this earlier version, as a result of successfully tapping the mole, you would get a nickel. But we got some feedback from long-term care homes that they didn't like the nickel being dispensed, and so we've removed the nickel dispenser from the design. So just a little bit of background. A lot of people with cognitive impairment are understimulated and socially isolated, whether they're living in retirement homes or long-term care homes or at their own homes in community. But we know that physical exercise is beneficial not only to physical functioning, but also to cognitive functioning, and it provides a protective effect against cognitive decline. So the challenge that we wanted to address with the Centivizer was to solve the problem of physical and cognitive inactivity using reward-based activities for people with cognitive impairment. Our goal was to maintain physical functioning through exercise, and also to maintain and also assess cognitive status through these serious games that people could play while engaging with the Centivizer. So the two sort of main different type of Centivizer that I will talk about today are the experimental Centivizer and the cognitive Centivizer. And as you can see here, this is its current form, so it's really changed a lot since that brown box with the nickel dispenser. But the experimental Centivizer is sort of it's a driving simulator, so it has a wheel and it has bicycle pedals and foot pedals. And the idea is that it gives individuals the opportunities to navigate around space, so they can drive around different scenarios, but they can also select different travel videos, so go to different parts of the world, visit different wonders of the world. They can fly in helicopters over New York, for example. So it's about giving individuals opportunities to explore the outside world from the comfort of an indoor space. And the cognitive Centivizer is a tablet, so the tablet's on top, but instead of needing people to tap on the screen, which is not an intuitive action for people with cognitive impairment, but also dementia, we wanted to have these sort of tangible buttons that people could press on. So they have to hit the correct button to be able to sort of tap the mole to successfully complete the task. And then the website that's currently under development is meant to track performance. You can track your loved one's cognitive performance over time. And this is for people, the staff members in long-term care and retirement, but also for family members if they want to check in on their loved ones. So the cognitive Centivizer monitors and measures different types of cognitive functions in this easy to learn suite of serious games. And the games are called Tap Me, so you have to tap on the mole. So you can measure cognitive speed, so how fast you tap on the target. You can measure something called working memory, which is a short-term memory that is shown to decline in cognitive impairment and dementia. So a target will wear a number, and the goal is to tap on the target with the same number that was a recently appearing target. So it's adding a little bit of cognitive challenge to the game. And then lastly, it can assess response inhibition. So this is withholding an urge to tap a target. So if you have moles that are wearing hats and moles that are not wearing hats, and you are told only to tap the moles without hats, it becomes difficult to not tap the moles that are wearing hats. And so that is a measure of response inhibition. So the target market for a Centivizer is individuals that are aging in place with cognitive impairment or dementia, so living at home with their loved ones, also retirement homes, as well as long-term care homes. And they're currently starting a trial at the York Care Center in Fredericton, New Brunswick, looking at the use of the Centivizer smart technologies on staff workload, resident agitation, as well as cognitive status. So last and certainly not least, I wanted to talk about tools for staying engaged during healthy aging. And this is where the company that I co-founded comes into play, brainshape.ca. So BrainShape is a community that's being designed and developed specifically for adults who are over the age of 60, who have the desire and drive to stay mentally and physically active and engaged. So I am a lead researcher at BrainShape, and the goal is for me to be able to have a platform and an opportunity to share brain health research and also inspire adults who are over the age of 60 in terms of how it is that they can maintain mental and physical activity in their lives. So there are 4 key pillars that support brain health: fitness, food and nutrition, socializing, and so mental activities or brain fitness. So the physical fitness piece is an absolute non-negotiable when it comes to brain health. Everyone should be exercising to some degree every single day. What that means for people is different depending on who you are and where your physical capacities are. So if someone is a marathon runner, they obviously have to exercise at a higher level than someone who is completely sedentary. Whereas for that person, just walking around the block every day would be a win. What the research shows is that humans actually grow and produce new brain cells, around 700 of them each and every single day. But physical fitness has shown to boost the number of brains that humans produce. It has been shown to double or even triple the amount of brain cells that we grow, and they predominantly grow in the hippocampus, which is the memory center of the brain. And so physical exercise increases neurogenesis, and neurogenesis is the growth of new brain cells. Nutrition and food is a core fundamental pillar of brain health, as I know everyone in the room is well aware of. One of the most interesting components of nutrition and food for me in terms of brain health is the consumption of healthy fats. So the human brain is composed of approximately 60% fat. And so these healthy fats that we eat, the fatty acids, we don't naturally produce them in our bodies, and so we actually have to consume them with the foods that we eat. So this is a balance of omega-3s and omega-6s. So they come from foods like fatty fish, avocado, nuts, for example. And these healthy fats really help the different brain cells in different brain regions communicate and connect with each other. So it's really important that you get your balance of omega-3s and 6s. Socializing with others is also a core pillar of successful aging and brain health. Interacting and conversing is a very complex brain activity, so it's really important. It's also enjoyable, you learn new things, and it's important sort of as our human basic needs to want to socialize with others. But I think it's really important not just to think about socializing as this set amount that people need to interact with others, because we all have different sort of desires and personality types. And so some people might be more introverted than others and maybe don't need as much or want as much social interaction as others. But still, it's a fundamental component of brain health. And lastly, the mental health component. So this is sort of that old saying, you use it or you lose it. And so it's interesting for me to think about what are the different brain fitness activities that people need to do to create and to facilitate a healthy mind. One of the key pieces that sticks out to me is that when I read newspapers articles or magazine articles, is that they always end these articles on brain fitness with a set list of activities. So it's like, do a crossword, seek novelty, garden. And it's all like, those things are good, don't get me wrong, but you have to think about who the person is as an individual and what it is that they like to do. So for example, my mom doesn't read novels, and if I told her, you have to read to improve your brain health, she will now inherently fail at this sort of goal of reading every day, because it's not something that she inherently finds valuable and meaningful, and it would be hard for her to incorporate that into her everyday. And so I really sort of urge people to think about what it is that they like to do, and then to build their brain fitness activities around those hobbies and interests. So how many here have heard about the concept of brain plasticity? Oh, almost everyone. That is very good. So the human brain is plastic and malleable. It changes in response to our environment and experiences. And this is sort of commonly known information for the last 20 or so years in the scientific community. Oh, right. Oh, so here's the chat bubbles. So yes, if anyone online wants to ask a question, you can do so through the online chat form. And I'm happy to hear that people online also know about brain plasticity. So I guess because of everyone knowing about brain plasticity, changes in our brains are capable of changing to our environments and experiences in three key ways. Our brains change physically, so the size and thickness of the different layers in our brains actually can change functionally, so how quickly and efficiently our brain works has also been shown to change. And it's also been shown to change chemically. So the concentration of brain chemicals, also called neurotransmitters, have been shown to change in response to experiences and the environment. So there's been lots of research recently that has supported this idea of brain plasticity and how activities that we do have an impact on how our brains function. One of my most favorite research projects that was published around 2014 on the topic of cognitive plasticity and brain plasticity in older adults is the Synapse project. So this was a project that was led by Dr. Denise Park at the Center for Vital Longevity in Dallas, Texas. And what this research did was look at the difference between productive engagement versus receptive engagement. So when the researchers grouped people into something called the productive engagement group, this was a group of individuals that were given a set of a program of course activities where they were required to acquire new and novel information. So it was new learning, and they had to engage in sustained mental challenges while they were sort of going through this course. Those in the receptive engagement group, it was more about sort of passive observation with familiar materials and knowledge. So there was no inherent mental challenge involved in being in the receptive engagement group, and it really relied on people's existing knowledge. So there was no new knowledge that was learned. So individuals that were in the productive engagement group, they were either in a photography course or a quilting course, or a course that combined the two. It was a 14-week program. They engaged in about 15 hours of activity per week. In the photography course, they learned about using the camera and also online video software. In the quilting program, they learned about basics for quilting and also how to use an electronic or computer-based machine, and then a combination of those two. Those in the receptive engagement group, there was a social group, so they would cook together, they would go on sort of field trips together, and they would play games together as a group, and it was really social and interactive. But there was no new knowledge that was attained through the social engagement group. And then a placebo group where individuals were asked to watch documentary videos and do crosswords, but there was no social engagement component to that group. And this is just some of the results from the Synapse project, the results that I found the most interesting. So they looked at individual participants' abilities to perform a memory task. So they looked at the pre-test, so that was before they engaged in the 14-week program, and then after they completed the program. And you can see that both groups increased their memory performance after having completed the 14-week of activity. But those that were in the productive engagement group, so the individuals that were in the quilting, learning quilting, or the photography group, their boost in memory performance was substantially more than those in the receptive engagement group. So the people that were just socializing or watching the documentary videos and doing crosswords. And what was really interesting to me is this subset of participants were actually given brain scans before they did the 14-week program and again afterwards. And while they were in the scanner, they were asked to do a task, and there was an easy version of the task and a harder version of the task. And essentially, when you're engaging in a cognitive activity that is extra challenging, we recruit additional brain regions to be able to compensate for this increase in demand. And so what they found, if you just look at that sort of bottom row that I highlighted in red, is that the individuals that were in the productive engagement group, so that was the photography course and the quilting course, they recruited additional brain regions during that hard task. So they were better able to modulate their brain activation that was required by the difficulty of the task while their brains were being scanned. Whereas the individuals in the receptive group, there was no difference in brain activation between before they did the course and after the 14 weeks. And so that was really powerful to me. So some conclusions from the Synapse project is that we see that sustained effort to require a demanding new skill, so in this case it was quilting and photography, showed these significant improvements in memory, and they also changed the way people's brains functioned. So there was a change in brain activation patterns. They looked at individuals' brain changes 1 year after the fact, and what they found was that some of those brain changes remained intact for those individuals in the productive engagement group, but many of them returned back to the pretest levels. And what this suggests is just that we have to maintain and sustain engagement in our challenging activities. It's not a matter of I challenged myself for 14 weeks, and so all the changes that I did that were elicited in my brow sort of set in stone and I can move on. You have to continuously act on it and exercise your brain to see those lasting changes. So this was an interesting quote that I found to elicit this point. Neuroplasticity, or brain plasticity, works under the same conditions as physical exercise does for the body. A single Zumba class or one run is not going to make a difference. However, the same practice done with consistency over time will gradually have noticeable and lasting effects on your body. And the same is true for practices which shape your brain. So you have to continuously work at it. Just like you continuously go to the gym and exercise your body, you have to continuously exercise your brain. So neural connections that are relatively inactive wither away. It's a kind of neural Darwinism. The busiest brain connections survive. So you use it or you lose it. And so it's those brain connections that we want to continuously exercise to help make sure that they are well ingrained and utilized often so that they don't wither away. A particular challenge from midlife and beyond is the brain's neural inclination to steer towards efficiency. It figures out the easiest way to get something done and hits repeat. And so the best way for me to sort of think about brain plasticity is to think about using this metaphor. So you're standing at the top of a mountain. It's freshly snowed on, you have your skis on, and you have to decide which way you're going to go down the mountain. There's obviously some sort of restrictions because there's some trees and some rocks, but generally you have a wide variety of options on how you want to go down this mountain. So you pick a route and you go down the mountain. Now, if you go back up the hill and continuously go down the same run, and you really like the one that you took initially, so it had nice sunlight, it had a great view, all else being equal, you're going to keep going down the same path continuously over and over again. And eventually you develop this sort of groove in the snow because it's how you continuously go down the mountain. And to be able to get out of that groove, so if you're halfway down the mountain in this groove that you've set and you want to try to get out of that groove, the deeper the groove is, the harder it's going to be to get out of that groove. And essentially, when you successfully get out of that groove is brain plasticity. It's changing the way that your brain figures out a problem or attacks some sort of environmental stimuli. So this last quote I found really interesting. It's one thing to decide something cognitively, but something else to be able to actually change. Habits, when they get that ingrained, get triggered without our thought and can only be undone with a lot of conscious effort. And so what we need to do to exercise our brains is really a cognitive challenge, and it's not an easy solution. And one of the key pieces for me is that it's unique for everyone. And so I wondered, a question to the group is if you know what you need to do to keep your brain fit. Does anyone have any ideas or activities that they currently do to ensure that their brains are kept in tip-top shape? I mean, coming to this hour-long lecture is definitely one idea to help get yourself sort of outside of your comfort zone to learn new information, learn new languages, absolutely. And it's really important for me to think about if that's something that you want to do, then that's definitely a good activity for you. It's challenging for everyone, but it has to be founded in an inherent interest. So at Brain Shape, we really want to help adults that are over the age of 60 build an optimal life that will ensure a strong and active mind. We want to have opportunities to provide resources and tools and inspiration so that individuals feel empowered to be able to create their own healthy lives to promote brain health and wellness. As in line with the community, the scientific community, we believe that the brain is plastic. It's malleable to our environments. Dancing, absolutely. Dancing is a great one and extremely enjoyable and fun. And we were talking about that early, weren't we, Mary? And so it's really important to think about what successful aging is and what brain fitness is a different experience for everyone. But why is it different? Piano lessons, absolutely. Piano lessons are a great one. So why is it that brain fitness and successful aging is different for everyone? And the reason is because everybody is unique. Everyone has different interests and different goals and different objectives and different contexts within which they are currently existing and working. There's no one size fits all solution to brain fitness. So the power to keep your brain fit and healthy is in your own hands. There's no finite list of activities to do. And that's the one piece that I find so frustrating when I read articles, is that it always gives this sort of list at the end. And it's not just that's the list and that's what you should do. It's about finding what your interests are and what your desires are and what your personal capacity is, and to build your brain fitness goals around that. So for example, me giving a 5-minute talk on research that I did at U of T, if I was just asked to give a 5-minute little synopsis of that, that wouldn't be difficult for me. But for someone who never publicly speaks and they're asked to get up and speak for 5 minutes, that might be a mental challenge. So it's different for everyone. Whereas if I never give full day workshops, so if I have to give a full day workshop, that's going to be mentally challenging for me to be able to figure out what that plan is and execute it well. And so what is challenging for me is different than what's going to be challenging for someone else. So activities and active minds lead to healthy people. And it's really important to think about what is required for you to be active in terms of your mind and your body. Because what my dad does to be physically and mentally active is definitely different from what my mom needs to do. And so really thinking about designing those activities based on your own person-centered needs and requirements. So the fundamentals of brain fitness is to exercise your brain with activities that are based on your hobbies and your own interests, but also really important to not just do what you like and that's it. It's about doing what you like and you enjoy, but then pushing yourself just ever so slightly outside of your comfort zone to give a little bit of a challenge. And it's a challenge so that you're stimulated, but it's not too challenging that you burn yourself out. It just has to be a little bit of extra effort. So I sort of think about this in terms of 3 key steps. The first is to really think about what your interests and your hobbies are. What do you already like to do? And what are you interested in and learning more about? And then to create SMART goals. And I know Mary and I have talked a lot about SMART goals. They're one of my favorites, but creating goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So you want to get really clear about how it is that you want to create a goal for yourself based on your interests and your hobbies that you can really achieve. And then the third step, which I think is really important, is owning your new identity. So what is this goal that you want to achieve for yourself? Where do you want to be that's going to push yourself outside of your comfort zone? And really owning that new identity and believing that you're capable of that, whether it's learning a new language or playing the piano. It has to be sort of based in a foundation of who you are and who you're capable of being to be able to come to fruition. So that's it for my talk today. We have a little bit of time for questions. If anyone was interested in learning more about sort of the SMART goals and building sort of brain boosting habits, I invite you to email me, Andrea@brainshape.ca, to ask for your brain boosting starter kit. It's completely free. It's just a little document that goes over sort of the brain boosting goals and how to sort of set themselves how to set yourself up for success to be able to achieve the brain boosting goals that you set out for yourself. And I have some business cards here if anyone wanted to take them with them. The graphic in the middle was supposed to just be to appear and then disappear, but I did want to acknowledge the funding that was given to me when I did my postdoctoral research on the tools for dementia and cognitive impairment. So I was funded through the AgeWell Network. And if you're interested to subscribe to the website, if you want to get up to date on all of the interesting information that we have and resources we have available. For example, I'm launching a podcast next month. You can go to brainshape.ca and subscribe to the website there, or follow me on social media at brainshapeto. So thank you so much for your time and your attention, and I will open the floor up to any questions that you may have. So that is a very interesting question. So I started working on BrainShape full-time in October of last year. And so right now it just exists as an online platform. And then what I've been really focusing my attention on in the last oh, sorry. Thank you very much for pointing that out. The question was, if a client comes to me through BrainShape, sort of what is the process that I take someone through as a client of mine at BrainShape? And so my response to that is that I don't yet have a plan. So I just started the company, working full time on it in October, and so my attention was really focused on getting the podcast launched, which is set to come out in March, so just in a week or two. So I'm really excited about that. But I really wanted to focus on building the resources and the tools and the information component of it first, just to also get a pulse on whether it was a topic that people were really interested in. But what I hope to do as the year progresses in 2019 is to really think about what that sort of offering is for individuals. But the way that I envision it is it would be a one-on-one type of client base where we build out activities that are really individual for that person, and thinking about what their goals are for themselves personally, and how do you keep track and keep someone motivated to continue in that way, forevermore, but also to feel their own personal desire and drive to continue that process even when they're no longer working with me. So that's still under development, but it's an idea that I have. Yes, Mary.
Why did you choose 60 as your cutoff?
So the question is why I chose 60 as my cutoff number. I was studying aging in undergrad and grad school, and we always had our sort of older adult group, and it was always 60 and above. And it's not to say that individuals that are less than 60 don't need to exercise their brains, because that's absolutely not the case. I think everyone needs to be doing it at all times. But I really needed to, as a business owner, to focus my attention on a group instead of saying it's for everybody, because then it's essentially for no one. And because of my research and always categorizing our older adult group as 60 and above, I thought that that was a good, safe number to use. Yes. So the question online is, some people are now retiring in their mid to late 50s. Absolutely. My dad retired in his early 50s, actually. And so, as I mentioned, I don't think that there's no qualitative meaning behind 60 and above, and that is the point where people have to start paying attention to what I'm teaching. It was just a matter of me focusing as a business owner to target a group of people. That being said, when I envision the future of brain shape, it goes younger than that. I just think it's important to target individuals and to meet people where they are currently, and I think that those needs differ depending on the age group. And so I wanted to segment it out for clarity for myself and for potential clients.
I had asked that specifically because I was thinking 55, 60, 65 is used in different contexts, and why you chose 60 was the reason I asked.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And did you have another question, Mary? Okay.
Sorry. For that middle section, I can't remember the name of the program.
The Centivizer?
Yeah. Why those particular games, especially the ones that are screen-based? And is there not a concern with repetition if you're using those same games over and over again?
So the question is about the Centivizer smart technology system and why we chose the games specifically that we were using, and if there's any concerns with repetition and how that might impact performance. And I think that that's a really important question. In the development of games, they're called smart games because they are not just a game for enjoyment. They actually have like an underlying cognitive assessment goal and objective. Those games were being designed as part of another research project. So in-house in the lab, those games were readily available. And so that was a starting place for the team when they were developing the Centivizer. It is in no way meant to just be those games. They're really hoping, I know Mark Chignell, the lead on the project, is really hoping to have other contributors come in with a wide variety of games. I think he envisions it to be a whole different suite of different games and different meanings behind the games. Perhaps it's grocery shopping, perhaps it's, going out to the ballpark and engaging with individuals. And I think that he envisions it having a lot of different games involved in that Centivizer. So it's not meant to just be the one game. That's just where they've sort of started with the design of the technology. And there was a comment from Ian about conversing, and I just wanted to give you a shout out, Ian. I will definitely get in touch, so thank you very much. I'm trying to be mindful of time. I'm here. I'm happy to address any questions, but I know that it's after 1, so if anyone has any additional questions, I invite you to stay on the chat or in person, because I'm not going anywhere, but I just wanted to point out the time if anyone here had to leave.
Thank you so much. That was a fascinating presentation, and we have a little gift for you as well.
Thank you so much, Esme. Thank you. Did you want to say goodbye? Thank you everyone online for joining. We're going to be closing the chat now, so thanks so much. And email me if you want to get in touch.